All right, hey everyone. So here's the deal. It is cold here. It is dark. It is wet. That's London for you, right? And my poor puppy Jolene was sick all night. She's feeling better, don't worry. But I was up all night with her. So I kind of had this idea of doing a different kind of video this week, just something a little more casual, a little more fun. I'm going to sit here. I'm going to have my third cup of coffee, and we are going to go through just a whole bunch of little tips and tricks that are going to make your banjo playing sound just a little bit better. These are small technical issues I see I've suffered from as well. So stick around. You might learn something. All right. Tip number one. This is a small fretting issue, but I see it really frequently. I understand people's natural inclination is just to smack their finger right down onto the center of the fret, right? But that's actually not where the best tone lives. It's going to sound better and more clear if you fret up as close to that fret line as you can get without actually touching it. It's a small difference, but it really will help, and it'll also help you reach other frets and just play a little bit better. It's more obvious on these lower frets. When you get up here, the frets get a little narrow, it's not as big a deal, but it is still really helpful. So just think about that as you play. Can you just slide down just a little bit so that your finger is as close to that fret marker as possible? And by the way, I got some good news. The same day this video is coming out, I have my new book coming out. So this is a book of beginner level clawhammer banjo tabs. I'm super excited for it. I'm really proud of it. We've got 15 very well crafted tabs, minimal embellishments, but these songs sound awesome. They're not always the typical songs you see for beginner level stuff. So you get to expand your repertoire a little bit. We've got practice tracks at, practice speed and performance speed. We've got a strum machine playlist. Yeah, it should be really good. It's only $19. Like I said, it comes out today. So if you're watching this on February 14th or later, I will put a link in the description and up there. Go grab it. Speaking of pitch and tone, a lot of people don't really know how to set up their bridge. So let's look at that really quick, right? So we have this floating bridge on the banjo, right? It's not fixed to anything. You can take it off, you can put it back on, but it actually is really important for your tuning. Where it sits on your banjo head will change the pitch of your banjo quite a bit. And so very often what this means is if you have it placed improperly, the higher you go on your banjo, the more out of tune you're going to get. So there's actually a really easy way to get your banjo set up right, your banjo bridge set up right. So all you're going to do, wherever you have it right now, put your tuner on. I'm in open G here. So I'm just going to play that fourth string, right? Make sure my D is tuned. Cool. Okay. Then I'm just going to fret lightly at the 12th fret. Again, as close to that fret marker as I can get without touching it. And play and look at my tuner. I am dead on the D. Awesome. Okay. Well, actually, let's just pull it out of tune a little bit. Okay. So I'm just going to scoop my banjo bridge just a little bit. And now I'm going to get back in tune here on the D. And now, when I play that D at the 12th fret, I'm high. And so all I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust my banjo bridge. And each time I do that, I am going to have to retune the open string. I'm just going to adjust my banjo bridge until it's in tune at both those places. And then you're just going to do the same thing for your first string. So and then at the 12th fret. Again, it's a little high, so I'm just going to scoot this just a little bit, just this side. I'm going to try to keep the other side as static as possible. And this is a little fiddly, like you're going to have to mess around with it a little bit. So here is the other trick, so useful. Take a pen when you have your bridge at the right place and just draw a line around it, right? That way, next time you change your strings or you move your banjo bridge somehow, your banjo falls over, whatever, you need to reset it, you've just got an outline, you can just pop it right in there, and you're going to be really close. Otherwise, you saw that, it's fiddly, right? It can take a little while to get your banjo bridge set up correctly. And speaking of things that will put your banjo out of tune, tip number 3, change your dang strings. and on this, I'm going to have to say, do as I say, not as I do. But I'll tell you, every couple of months I go, man, my banjo is not sounding too good. What's going on here? And invariably I think, oh, when's the last time I changed my strings? Oh, it was September? Yeah, that explains it. It sounds dull. And look, it happens so gradually. I need to change these right now. Like I said, do as I say, not as I do. But like your strings are just going to gradually lose that luster, lose that shine, lose that wonderful sound. And it happens so gradually that a lot of times you're not even going to really notice how bad they've gotten. And then you're going to change them and you're going to just be blown away, by how much better your banjo sounds. And I do like to have a little rule of thumb here for changing your strings. In my opinion, and this might depend on you and how you play your banjo, etc., but I like to change my strings after about every 20 hours of play. So for me, that's going to be, every 7 to 10 days, I'll probably just give those strings a change. Like I said, I think it's been about a month right now. So I know what I'll be doing after I finish with this video. I already lost track. I'm not sure what number we're on, but our next tip is about right hand technique. The basic idea here is that it should be a conscious decision where along the strings, along the fretboard, you are playing your banjo, right? You're going to get different sounds, different places, and depending on the song, it can sound quite different. And so it should be a decision that you make depending on the song or even the piece of the song. You can change it up if you want. So as an example, very often, I like to play above the scoop. It gets that nice sustain. It sounds really cool. But I'm going to come down further if I want a more like a punchier, more percussive, especially if I want to, get a nice little thump going with my thumb. And depending on where I play, that can sound different as well. But don't just let your hand fall where it falls. Make an actual decision there, and that will improve your sound quite a bit. And if you are brand new to the banjo, if you're really just getting started with this stuff, I can't recommend my quick start guide highly enough. So this is a totally free 90-minute video course that is going to teach you how to play your first song for clawhammer banjo. I really put a lot of work into it. It's a lot of fun. I've had over 1,000 people go through it at this point, which is awesome. So I'll put a link to that in the description. You can check that out if that is of interest to you. Now let's keep going with our right hand. One thing I see all too often, and I feel like it's such a bad habit to fall into, so I just want to call it out here. If you have this habit, I want you to think maybe about spending, 1 to 2 minutes a day sort of building a better right hand technique, a better right hand habit. And what I'm talking about is coming in and then hesitating, bring your finger down and turning your wrist to flick your string. You can tell if you're doing this in one of two ways. So I kind of see this in two ways. One is that turning of the wrist. So you come down and then you're just turning your wrist to pluck. The other one is if your finger is straightening a bit, right? Or you feel your finger moving right about here. You may be doing that, and that's something to be aware of. The problem is that it's going to really affect your rhythm. It's going to mess with your rhythm. It's going to always give you that hesitating, hitching sound, especially at speed. So what happens is everything's just slightly behind the beat, even just a fraction of a second, but it really adds up and it really, to the listener really hears that. It just never quite sounds right when you're behind the beat a little bit. In general, like you can sometimes get away with being slightly ahead of the beat. That gives a driving feel, but when you're behind it, it just never quite sounds good. And that really what it boils down to is this whole root of so many right hand issues. And that is timidity, low confidence, right? Like, don't be afraid to miss a string. I miss strings all the time. It's not a big deal. It is much better to miss a string or play a wrong note in time than it is to play out of time. Playing out of time is what's going to crash a song. Playing a bad note, it's kind of like, whatever. It's not the end of the world, right? You want to reduce it, but it's not going to crash the song generally. All right, let's get a little left-hand tip in here. So I specifically want to talk about slides. This is my favorite little tip for slides that really, I think, makes things so much easier. I have so many people say they just can't execute slides, or even more so, going down the fretboard. Here's the trick that I think a lot of people miss, and I guess I didn't quite realize that I was doing this, or I wasn't doing it consistently, and when I sort of made the effort to always do this when I did my slides, they just improved, 1,000,000%. So the idea is, when you're sliding up, what happens to a lot of you, is you're kind of catching your finger on those fret markers, right? and they just either sort of mess with your rhythm or they kind of stop you altogether. I can't tell you how many times I've rammed the corner of my fingernail into the fretboard or the fret marker, and it doesn't feel good, right? So all you're going to do when you go for that slide is you're just going to tilt your finger just a little bit. This way, I'm kind of exaggerating here. You're just going to just go a little bit onto the side. And that way, that's going to give you that angle you need to just slide effortlessly over the strings. Same thing works the other way. You're just going to tilt your finger just a little bit the other way. You're just letting this corner of my finger just come a little bit off the fretboard. I'm just kind of sliding on this part of my finger so that I can just smoothly glide over those fret markers without getting caught. And generally, another huge tip here, people don't think about it as much, but it does really make all the difference, is your fingernail care. So really keep those left hand fingers as close as possible. Mine are actually a little long right now. I really like to have almost no fingernail sticking up there. So really think about your fingernails, maybe experiment. I mean, some people do crazy stuff. I've heard of people taping golf balls to their fingernails, whatever. I do sometimes use this nail hardener stuff that keeps them from chipping. That's been pretty helpful. Although I think if you just are healthy, then generally your fingernails will stay in pretty good shape. But I don't know. Sometimes I have trouble with them chipping. Maybe you do too. I think sometimes the strings just kind of tend to wear through them a little bit. And then I was just talking about this with a student the other day. One thing to be aware of as you're coming. So they were saying that as they are doing these single string strikes, they're muting the string. And what's happening is that as their fingers coming in, they're sort of continuing to drive down towards the fretboard. And then this part of their finger is coming and muting the string. So I warn you against flicking or plucking with your fingers, right? But I think the way I would describe this best is I still divert my finger a little bit as I come in. So the idea is when I come in, I'm diverting that force that is just going towards the fretboard into the next string over so that my fingernail sort of bounces off and comes to rest on that next string. And really, I never go past, I don't know, what is that, like 1/8 of an inch past my fingertip to strike the strings. And that is sort of the goal there, and that'll keep you from muting the strings. And a long nail will help with that. All right, I hope you have enjoyed my grab bag of tips and tricks today. If you want to play some songs, check out this next video.